Okay. So I'm not an economist. I'm an engineer. And I made a PhD in applied mathematics. And then I mostly focused the application on energy and economics. So it's slightly, yes, still. Okay, so I would like to share with you some research that we're conducting about low carbon scenarios and specifically about low carbon prospective studies. And as a motivation to this work, I want to come back to this graph that you may all know about the trajectories for GHG emissions according to the IPCC summary for policymakers. And what strikes us when we look at this is what do they tell as far as the range of future is really open. Behind these trajectories, which are based on 900 scenarios, we have multiple kind of models from technological to behavioral and climatic models according to what is written in this summary for policymakers. And we find a problem in trying to understand what they tell as far as a profusion of global trajectories will lead, in our sense, to finally erase what is urgency behind this question of climate change and the question of uncertainty as far as everything is possible. And it erases also the local realities that are behind these GHG emissions as far as at the end you really don't know where they come from. So this is why we have launched a share on modeling for sustainable development together with MinParisTech. I am the director for this part, and with our colleague from the École des Ponts et Chaussées, with Mr. Ourcade. And the idea behind this, this work that we're conducting in the share is to understand what kind of scenario for the future will be helpful in order to find right decision to avoid what we want to avoid. So the first point, which is very important when you look at scenarios, is to precise the position that you adopt regarding the future. And then you have to have the keys in order to reconnect the trajectories to the reality, which is to say the ability to open the black boxes that are behind these models that are deriving the scenarios I presented. So first of all, we believe not in prediction, but in prospective. And this is a very important point that I want to emphasize here. And I'd like to precise that as prediction imposes the future, the idea of prospective is very different as far as it allows to envision all the possible futures, and the aim is to enlighten tomorrow's consequences of today's choices and decision. So the exercises are very different, and there is a misunderstanding between the two kind of exercises usually when trying to read these famous scenarios for the future. So we have to be with me in this talk, as all what I will present is prospective exercise. That is to say, we would like to be prepared to unexpected trends or events thanks to the assessment of a diversity of imagined futures, and to follow Pierre Massé, which was the first director of the plan in France. We'd like to build a prosthesis for the stakeholders or decision makers who desire a calculated adventure. For this, we need tools, and this will enrich the debate to evaluate decisions and measures. So, these tools are the tools that are behind these 900 scenarios I presented, which are based on very different models, in fact. Some of them have a predominance in economics and are based on what we call the top-down approach. Some of them are based on technological approach and are based on a bottom-up approach. Some of them are integrated assessment model, which means that they try to link everything with climate models here. So these different modeling approaches do not enable, as far as I believe this, to compare the trajectories that are compared in the IPCC scenarios. So to go further, I want to divide these scenarios in two parts. For one part, you have these that are relying on technical approaches, and the other are relying on economic approach. So, roughly speaking, the technical approach considers that the energy sector is disaggregated. The deviations are permitted regarding to historical data, and you speak about energy as an engineer person, which means that you speak about energy in energy unit as a function of efficiency usage. The economic approach, roughly speaking, is considering that energy is something that is aggregated, which is a part of the economy, and they speak about energy as monetary units. So as I told you, I'm not an economist, I'm more an engineer, and naturally this is the approach that we believe we have to adopt. Why focusing on energy? When you look at future scenarios, first of all, I would like to remember the figures that have been given by the AEA. 2/3 of the global GHG emissions come from the energy sector. There is a big question of inertia in the development of new investment in energy. Here you have the lifespan of capital investments, and you see that the periods of the existence of new plants are really long. So when you look at the future, the fact is that they have this investment, and the choice that you make will last for a long time. And also they put a question of the way these investments are made today, because a big part of them are sustaining a lot of country economies. So you cannot change the things without taking into account the consequences. So this is the first motivation that we have about the question of energy in the future. And what have we witnessed since 2000? Many solutions proposed in order to combat climate change. I can mention here the fact that some were believing in the market, while the opening of electricity and gas markets occur in Europe. Solutions were promoted about industrial ecology, energy efficiency, green economy, degrowth, carbon finance, energy efficiency more, first, second and third generation of biofuel, biomass, solar, wind, marine power, storage facilities, flexibility, smart grid, smart city, and so on and so forth. So regarding this context, we feel that there is a big complexity in order to understand which of those have to be promoted and which will have the expected impact on this climate change issue. This is why we believe that we need tools in order not to mimic, to predict, to tell anything deterministic and sure about the future, but only to think about the situation And for this, I will follow what Mr. Ecole said yesterday. We need we need a tool to benchmark. So for a mathematician, the best way to benchmark is to formulate the problem clearly. So the problem is, as Mr. Ecole mentioned, the planar problem. This is the point of view that we adopt. We don't say that it's the way reality is functioning, but it's the way we want to think about the situation. And it's really simple to handle such a tool. As far as you define your objective function, you define the decision on which you have potential leverage, and you decide the space in which this decision can evolve in your problematic. And for this, we did not invent anything as far as we're following this activity allocation problem that was first based on the developments coming from the 1930s, where the question was how much should a nation save, and which derived the macro modeling approaches and the allocation activity approach that I will present here very rapidly, because our friend from Germany described this. What is the problem? You have just to fulfill a demand with a certain amount of production element, and you want to make a plan for this. So there is a unique planner which decides for everybody, and he aims to minimize a cost function depending on all the elements that you will produce. So we will do this for the energy system, the reference energy system that is described here, and that gives you all the links between the input and the outputs. To refer to what Mr. Hall said yesterday, I think we are focusing on the cultural transformation part of the graph that you presented. And our aim is to determine over a given horizon what will be the capacities, the investment, and the activities of your energy system that has to fulfill a given demand. So the problem is driven by the demand. The horizon is over several decades, usually 2050 or 2100, but we prefer to speak about 2050 because we think the other horizon is really far from here. And we have also very interesting elements of description in this approach, as far as we describe all the technologies that are embedded in the energy system. We have some physical elements that are described in order to balance the flows, and we satisfy a certain amount of relevant technical constraints as far as we consider all the energy sector, the heat and power sector. And I will not go into details, but this development of models is very famous in the modeling community, as far as we do it in the Energy Agency with a lot of other colleagues. So I will go, I will just emphasize the fact that we never use it in order to derive one trajectory. The interest of having such a model is instead of using scenario one or several that are in stock, always try to tackle new question with new dedicated scenarios, taking into account new hypotheses that are needed in order to optimize our problem. So to go further, we have this very nice tool dedicated to the description of energy system. And we believe that in order to identify the long-term strategy relevant for all type of climate constraints, we need to reconcile different scales, which are the temporal, spatial, social, and financial scale. What I mean by temporal scale is the fact that when you look at very long horizon, you cannot catch all the dynamics that are more short, and you have to work a little in order to have, for instance, plausibility of your scenario regarding this fiability issue for the power system, and the fact that you can solve the equality between the production and the consumption at each instantaneous time over your horizon. We have some work done on this, but this is not the focus of my talk today. You have also this question of space aggregation, as far as you're just speaking about the development of your new investment in capacities and their activities, but you don't speak about specialization of these investments. So we have developed some interesting elements about this. You have also the financial scales, because the market and the financial tools that are dedicated to fight against climate change have also to be embedded in this tool. And you have what is very interesting, this idea of societal scale, as far as in the center of this loop there is the human, which has a central role, and I will go in development for this. So we will focus on these two scales for the rest of my talk. And very quickly, I would like to describe what we can observe when we know how to open the black boxes. So back to this IPCC reports, and there you see something that for me doesn't mean anything. So using our tool, we will try to understand better what is behind this multiplicity of trajectories. So here, what we have done, we have developed different scenarios based on different assumptions regarding the way the countries, excuse me, so the different countries were here considering their development regarding with the pledges that were discussed before the COP21. So here you have for the world the business as usual, and you have here the amount of gigaton of CO2 emitted. So what I have to say is this is one of the results that we can achieve with our model. Because coming from the energy produced, then you can have the CO2 emissions. And I have to precise also that compared to previous trajectories, we are focusing on the energy sector, as the other were taking account also the other sectors. So here, what you have is this business as usual. And here you have what we call the UNFCCC scenario, which is the scenarios that is compliant with the 2-degree target. For an optimization model, it's very easy to have such a scenario as far as you put the constraints, and then you tell the model, okay, we would like you to follow this trajectory, and he follows it, because it's the coordinate here? Here. It's gigaton of CO2, yeah.
Per year.
Oh, yeah, over the horizon, here. From it's for the, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Are you changing the technology through time, or you are keeping the same technology?
No, I didn't precise this. We have a basket of technology that evolve over the time, and we make assumption about the way this technology can evolve. each technology is associated with the efficiency, the level of emission, the cost of investment, the operation and maintenance costs. So we have different assumptions for the different periods, and the basket evolves. So I would like, I have to explain. We have divided the whole world in different regions. So the industrial country, the fast developing countries, and the developing countries. So roughly speaking, I think you know what is behind, but I can give you details if you need. And what we have done is we have put some pledges on these different countries. For instance, if I look at this curve, which is here, we have said that industrial and fast developing countries aim to reach 95% of reduction of their business as usual scenario, and the developing countries are aiming to reduce the 30% level considering their business as usual scenarios. And you have different level of pledges. What I want to emphasize here is when you look at these curves, you may be interested just in comparing them and saying, okay, this one is better than this one, which is better than this one, and so on. But what is interesting is to open the curves and to understand what is behind. So this is what we have done for the first curve that I mentioned, which was the fact that we put this constraint on all the countries, and we see what the model proposes. Here you see the burden that relies on the different different countries for this assumption. So you see that it's kind of balanced between the three kinds of countries. But when you look at this in a different way, what you see here, you have the business as usual of the three groups of countries, and you see that this group is much more affected over the time than the other one, and this group is the developing countries group. So this means that the burden for the developing country is up to 84% compared to their business as usual, which is huge. Here it's the level of CO2 in gigaton that are emitted for each groups or country. Alors, so clear is the developing countries here. Then you have the fast developing countries, and then you have the industrial countries. Okay. So looking at the other curve. So remember, I said that the other curve, which was not so far from the first one, was a curve where the pledges were put from the countries, from the group of countries. And here you see that you have completely different scenarios in terms of burden for the different groups of countries. At the end here, you have only a 30% mitigation for the developing countries regarding to their scenario in the business as usual. So this is really interesting to understand that at the beginning there were two curves close. At the end you have very different consequences for the different regions. We can go further with the model because we can continue to open the boxes and we can extract the power sector for each scenarios that are presented and look at the consequences in the different regions regarding this big effort on the reduction of the level of CO2 emission. And I will not comment the results, but just to show you that considering the different assumptions, so business as usual, the UNFCCC with 2 degrees or the pledges, then you have different level of investment for the different technology. And this is where the debate must be taken when discussing about these climate pledges and the mitigation option, because nobody can be involved in pledges without knowing the impact that he will get on his own investment. This is the power investment, but there are many other examples that are interesting to tackle. So now I would like to talk about this different scale reconciliation, which is the societal scale, the behavior. So what we believe is that looking at the future without considering behavior is something useless. Because there is a very important part of the behavior that is explaining the energy consumption. So this is the work of one of my PhD students, Jean-Michel Caïla, which now works at EDF. And we have conducted with EDF a survey in order to understand what was the behavior in energy consumption of 2,000 French households related to their housing, their climate behavior, and the transportation behavior. And what was striking in the space heating behavior is the fact that we saw a great dispersion between the different households. There was a factor 6 of dispersion between the extreme deciles for households, depending on the thermal quality of housing, their space living area, the type of heating system that they have, climatic variable, and so on. So what we decided is to try to embed this heterogeneity in behavior in the model that I presented. And Jean-Michel divided in 180 segments the households in order to catch the fact that they had access to different available technologies, the fact that the level of energy consumed was different regarding to the constraint that I mentioned, the fact also that the preferences for their equipments were changing according to their ability to change or their own preferences. And we had embed this in what he called the Times household model and compare it with the results that we had before when the household was a mean household, like it is derived in many modeling. And then you can see that the new model, which is here, brings, so you don't see the different technology, but here, okay, I have to explain what is this graph. You have, in fact, the space heating system stock that the household choose over the horizon. So we have extracted for the model just this space heating stock. And we have still the horizon between 2010 and 2050. And we have taken two assumptions on the prices, a low energy prices assumption and a high energy price assumption. So we know when we do this sensitivity analysis that this has an impact on the development of different kinds of technologies, the ones that are more sensitive to the energy prices. And what you see here is that you have much more different choices that are made when you take into account the different segmentation that I presented. Yes?
Could you give a hint what those choices are? Really
yeah, it's too small. So, but the problem is I cannot read myself. So, sorry. I have to go back to my slide and as... Non, j'arrive pas à lire et en plus... I have wood. So you have wood, convection, gas. You have coal here. And collective. Okay. So I can give you the slide after. Sorry. I'm sorry because I don't have this on my screen either, so it's difficult. Okay.
Well, while you're looking, is there a population increase embedded in
Ouais. Yes, yes. There are, I didn't describe the assumptions,
But if so, which one?
but there are assumptions about population increase, about prices, about many drivers, in fact. No, this. No, doesn't have. It doesn't. We don't want to be in the dark. Okay, I can. Yes, she can read.
Those ladies paid, and you say it's good. What
Ça,
should I
vas-y.
do? Okay, I listen to you.
She can read. She will tell you.
What does collective mean?
It's a heat. Comment on dit? Réseau collectif. District heating. Yeah, district heating.
Heat pump.
Fuel.
Boiler.
Yeah.
Gas boiler.
Convectors.
Conductors. And I don't know,
Wood
wood
system, yeah. We have a paper. I can give you the references. Okay, so just would like to continue my demonstration. Then we have extracted from these results the level of emissions that were the consequences of these choices. So over the same horizon with same hypothesis on the households. So you have the regular mean household model, and here you have our new times household model. So what you see is the fact that it's much more optimistic in this case in terms of CO2 emitted than in the case where you take into account the behavior. So that tells us that if you take this in order to make some policy recommendation, you can be really far from what will be the reality if you take into account what will the household do in his choices. Yeah.
Could you just read the axes?
The axis.
One had to be CO2 emissions, and then the other one is what's the label?
It's
No, I'm looking on the two y-axes.
the y-axis. So you have the energy consumption here, mean in the mean household. Everywhere you have the energy consumption, okay, for the household. And the right axis is the ton of CO2 emitted, okay? I can send you the paper. Okay, so as a conclusion, what we can see is what we have seen is the fact that household behavior explains a large part of energy consumption, and that the technological change by themselves cannot be sufficient to reach the ambitious emission reduction pathways, that we have the need to consider and include household behavior in the long-term energy model that we are developing. And the heterogeneity is also of great interest. Okay, so we have to fulfill this.
Maybe I don't get the point, but this must depend a lot on what the modelization of the segment behaviors, no?
Yeah, but
What did you put and
so this.
why it is reasonable to...
Okay, so there was a complete study that has been conducted about the exploitation of the survey in order to derive this segmentation of 180 households. And this is, I did not develop that, but that was and the thesis of Jean-Michel, and this was a 3-year work in order to achieve a very good representation of this behavior. But for sure, this has been done for France, cannot be applied in other countries. So this is a very long work to develop.
Maybe the
and maybe not to the future. So, yeah, you have to follow, and the difficulty is to get the data in order to achieve such a study. Yes?
I don't think there's anybody from a developing country in this room.
No, this
And
is why
probably
this is
many
not.
have watched this model, but if I were from a developing
Mm-hmm.
country, I'd say, get real, lady. I ain't gonna do that.
You are not going to do what?
I'm not gonna reduce my carbon footprint. I want a car, I want a bigger house, I wanna be warm in the winter and cool in the summer.
Yeah, yeah, okay. But we can take into consideration what you want and embed it in the model.
No, I said
And-
that, but when you said that so much of this reduction had to come out of the developing countries.
Oh no, that was the previous
Or
slide.
just one scenario.
That was one scenario.
Yeah.
No, so you come back to the first part, okay?
Okay.
And in the first part, what I said is the fact that exactly if you are living in a developing country and you have to be impacted by the burden that in the negotiation some other guy has decided for you, then you have to follow something that you did not choose. This is exactly what I say. You need to understand what will be the consequences in order to evaluate if if it is compliant with the way of life that you wish to have. And this is the difficulty we have. Okay, so I would like to finish on Mr. 5 minutes.
Then there's a discussion.
Yeah. So another PhD student tackled this difficulty of understanding what will be the consequence of degrowth, as far as degrowth is presented by a lot of people as one of the solutions I mentioned at the beginning of my talk. So he had a first part of his PhD thesis trying to catch what was behind this concept of degrowth and not to make this really easy assumption that the fact that we choose degrowth is just translating in the idea that GDP is degrowing. So it's not a GDP degrowth per se. These are the conclusions that he achieved. We talk about Serge Latouche in the first day of this meeting. It's a project of a transition toward a society of frugal abundance. It's a matrix for multiple alternatives, which is here, and it's an ambition, a voluntary, democratic, socially sustainable, equitable, smoothed-out scaling of production and consumption for high consumption countries to an environmental sustainable level. So he had the difficult task to try to translate this in some quantitative elements in order to use a modeling approach. So as GDP degrowth is a plausible consequence of degrowth, we wanted to go further and to understand what the prospective modeling that we developed can tell us about this, and if the degrowth could be a solution that can happen in a socially and environmentally sustainable way, under which condition, which concrete proposal could enable this sustainable degrowth, was welfare state still living in a degrowth economy. Okay? So, back to the modeling, what we decided is to conduct a survey asking people what they were intending about this degrowth solution. This is what he did with very long interviews with people that were believing in the degrowth option. And then he developed completely a model, which is a regular input-output model, based on Stella, which is a simulation soft, and based on the public data in order to represent the French national accounts and focus on the structural relationship and the long-term concerns rather than conjunctural issues. So I will not detail the modeling approach, but what is interesting is that the output of the modeling approach is bringing a demand that then we can take as an input, because remember that our model was driven by the demand of our energy system long-term modeling, and then understand what will be the consequences of this degrowth question. So one example of a scenario that he has built after an interview was the implementation of changes in consumption of various goods, the switch to more vegan food, the changes in mobility and model shares, relocalization, change in cohabitation behaviors, decrease in working time, slowdown in efficiency improvement, 100% renewable by 2050. So he took one of the scenarios, and he also built another scenario which he called green growth, because you know that also green growth is something that is à la mode. And he compared he embedded this in his input-out model in order to develop a result in terms of demand, which was so the output of this macroeconomical simulation. And he had these two scenarios. In the first one, you see that you have a 15% decrease of the whole consumption compared to the business as usual. And in the degrowth scenario, a much more decrease than in the previous one. So very, very quickly to the results. I sum up here. He did the interview. He entered that in his input-output macro simulation. He derives the demand. He extracted from this the electrical demand. Then we embedded this in the times model I presented in the beginning. And then he added constraints. And we looked at the results of these elements. I have 3 slides of results just to give you some insight of this work. So here you have the capacity invested for the 3 scenarios over the whole period of optimization, which is for 2010 to 2050. And so we have added all the invested capacities. So what is interesting is the fact that you see that if you're just in a green growth scenario, or if you add this 100% renewable assumption, then you have to invest much more. And even if you are in the degrowth scenario, and you wish to have at the end of the horizon a 100% renewable issue, you have to invest in new fossil capacities in order to accompany the phase out from nuclear. If you look at the result regarding to CO2 emission, then you see that you have a really huge decrease in the emission regarding to the green growth scenario when you hit the degrowth or the 100% and green growth scenario. And what is very interesting, we think, is the fact that when you look at the levelized cost over the horizon, which is the objective function of our model, you see that you don't have much more investment in terms of total discounted cost in the degrowth scenario than in a scenario that follows this 100% green growth. So I have finished. Just to conclude. Yes, because I didn't know nothing about EROI. So my question for the EROI guys here is, in the degrowth scenario, do you think that this pyramid that you presented still apply as far as the wish of the way of life of the people is very different than the one that we follow in the developing country in which we live? So this is just to open the discussion. And just to sum up some conclusive remarks, So what I wanted to show you today is an approach that we develop in order to enable decision makers to identify the long-term strategies that are relevant to all types of climate constraints, which are many, to tackle complex systems associated with, more specifically with climate-related issues, investigating the maturity of electricity and market and carbon market, dealing with the challenges of deploying electrical systems that integrate technologies linked to renewable energy and smart grids. We have a lot of work done on this field that I didn't present today. And consider the central role of people from whom the future must be acceptable and desirable, which is compatible with their own aspiration. And what we believe is that these prospective exercises based on a methodology that enable all what I mentioned is the condition of the elaboration of a desirable energy transition, I can say also smart, as far as the transition that the one, which are us, more than the government, wish to elaborate. Otherwise, all transitions are possible. And I have, I like this quotation of Pascal. Travaillons donc à bien penser, c'est le principe de la politique. The principle of politics is to think in a right way. And this is the end of my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.